Hey guys, it's Alex. I've been getting a lot of questions about creative sound choices lately, how to get music and dialogue sitting together organically, how to bring sound effects into the mix so that they immerse your audience into exactly the right feeling that you need. And I feel like those actually address a deeper technical question about mix translation. At the end of the day, you can make all the creative choices that you want, put as much time and energy into them as you can, but if they don't translate to your viewers' systems, then they're not going to sound very good and it's not going to matter very much. So today I want to give you a couple of quick tips on how to spend less time on technical hangups and more time making creative decisions by calibrating your listening environment. Now, I know room calibration is not the most exciting topic in the world, but without it, all of the decisions that you're going to be making on your audio content, whether it's for YouTube or you're working on distribution for Netflix or broadcast television or feature films or anything in between, if you don't have the expectation that a calibrated room sets of how your levels are going to sit within themselves and how your content is going to translate to other spaces, then it could just end up sounding bad everywhere and you might not ever know it. Until, of course, it's too late and it's already out in the world and people are saying, oh man, I really don't understand why this sounds so bad. What's going on here? But through level calibration, you're able to kind of set a foundation or a baseline of where things are supposed to sit within your mix and how they're going to effectively translate to other systems. And you can take a little bit of that guesswork out. Now, in order to talk about this stuff effectively, there are three terms that I want to mention that kind of provide a baseline of information that you'll be dealing with. Those are dBSPL, dBFS, and LUFS. Anytime you're talking about level management or loudness measurement, you're going to be speaking the language of decibels. First, there's dBSPL, or decibel sound pressure level, and that's the measurement of acoustic energy a sound has while it's traveling through the air. So anything that you would actually hear in a real environment or on headphones, that's going to be measured in sound pressure level. It correlates with dBFS or dB full scale. dBFS is simply the digital approximation of that same measurement. So it only exists in computers, digital recorders, things like that. It's not actually measuring acoustic energy. You'll see dBSPL, or the actual acoustic energy of a sound, measured in positive numbers from 0 to whatever. And 85 dBSPL is reasonably loud, and 140 is when your eardrums burst, and then 60 is kind of quiet, those sorts of things. dBFS is measured with 0 being the highest number and then negatively all the way down. So minus 10 in the digital environment is extremely loud because you've only got 10 dB more headroom until you're digitally clipping everything. The other term to be familiar with is LUFS, or loudness units full scale. And that's measured on the same scale that dBFS is, and you can almost use the terms interchangeably because they're talking about similar things. But LUFS is specifically the measurement of the average level of whatever audio you're working with from start to finish. Talking about this stuff any further can get pretty technical and pretty confusing quickly, but the big thing to know is that LUFS is the standard adopted by pretty much every platform out there that's distributing content, whether it's YouTube or Netflix or Amazon or any broadcast television channel. This is the one to be familiar with. So again, dBSPL measures acoustic energy of sounds actually happening in the air, whereas LUFS is the average measurement in the digital environment of a whole audio track, and it's measured in decibels full scale. Just points of reference to be able to talk about, hey, this is loud or it's quiet. And those two numbers are really important because they allow us to have the conversation of how loud should your mixes be? How loud should your dialogue be in relation to how loud your music is, in relation to how quiet or loud your sound effects are at any given point? Those questions are actually so important that whole committees have been formed by various corporations and legal groups to establish, here is how loud this should be. Here is the point at which everybody should be mixing sound to in whatever distribution platform they're working on. And that's actually kind of amazing for as boring of a subject as loudness management is, to be able to say, how loud should my dialogue be for something? Well, it should actually be minus 24 LUFS average across your program, plus or minus 2 dB margin of error. And having that kind of baseline established of how loud your overall mix should be across the entire thing is going to establish how you mix all of your audio. The complicated thing is that it's sort of different depending on which network you're talking about. YouTube has a maximum loudness of, I think they just changed it to -14 LUFS. So whatever you upload, if it goes over that on average, if your mix comes out being super loud, you've just slammed all your levels up to, -1 on your meters, YouTube will actually turn it all down to about -14 LUFS. Spotify is slightly different for music. They do the same idea, though. I think it's -13 with them. And all of these other platforms have some kind of normalization ballpark that they say, your stuff's too loud, we're going to turn it down to this. Real quick on that note, there's actually a website called loudnesspenalty.com that I really like. You can upload the audio you're planning to post on YouTube or Spotify or whatever platform you might be distributing on, and it will tell you if your audio is going to be turned down by that platform and by how much. So with all that in mind, how do you calibrate your listening environment? Well, you really only need two things. The first is a way to measure how loud something is in your space, whether it's on headphones or out of normal speakers or whatever. And the other is a standardized piece of audio that is going to be consistent no matter where you play it from. It's always going to be the exact same level in your computer. The measurement equipment is called an SPL meter, and if you want to spend a little bit of money, they're out on Amazon for, I think you can get them for like 30, 40 bucks. There are obviously nicer ones that are way more expensive. If you decide to go that route, look for one that has C weighting. That's just a little bit more of an accurate measurement in relation to how the human ear picks up sound. It sort of measures a flat frequency response rather than trying to approximate something else. There are also plenty of different applications for things like the iPhone that you can download for free that, while they're not the most accurate things in the world and it's not going to be as good as a dedicated SPL meter, it's still way better than not having a calibrated room. As far as standardized audio is concerned, you'll want pink noise. And you've probably heard of white noise, which is every frequency from 20 hertz all the way up to 20 kilohertz played at exactly the same level. Pink noise is very similar, it's just got a grade to it, so as you get higher in the frequency spectrum, it actually drops off a little bit in amplitude, and that's what's used to calibrate any audio space, whether it's a theatrical feature dub stage or a TV mixing space or music studios, really anything that deals with sound. You can find a couple of links in the description to a couple of SPL meters that I like and a downloadable link for pink noise so that you can do this on your own. The actual process of calibration is pretty straightforward until you get into like room tuning and psychoacoustics and like putting EQs on speakers. It gets really complicated in that realm and kind of expensive. But if you want to just get the baseline levels correct in your room, all you need to do is load up that pink noise file into whatever application you're working in, whether it's Premiere or Pro Tools or Logic or anything. Make sure there are no level adjustments being done to the file inside of your DAW, and what you'll see on your meters is that it plays back at -20 on that dB full scale meter. Now, you're going to calibrate each speaker in your system individually, no matter how many speakers you have. So if you're just working with a stereo setup, it's going to be the exact same process as if you're working in 5.1 or 7.1 or beyond. So once you've got that pink noise file loaded up, pan it all the way to hard left to start off with. Put the SPL meter at the listening position and on your speaker, adjust the level of the output until that pink noise is playing back at about 83 dB SPL on your meter. That's going to be kind of uncomfortably loud and you're going to kind of think, whoa, this is a little intense. Should this be playing back this hot? Yes, 83 dB SPL is roughly the point at which the human ear's frequency response, how you're hearing each individual frequency from 20 hertz all the way up to 20K, becomes the most linear and the most accurate. So you're getting the best representation of the sounds coming out of your speaker. Do the same thing for each individual speaker in your system, whether you've just got a stereo setup or you've got a center speaker or you've got a whole surround array, or even if it's just on headphones, you can at least approximate something by putting your SPL meter right inside the headphone cup and getting that level roughly to 83. Once you've gotten the speakers in your system each playing back at 83 dB SPL with that pink noise, you're effectively done calibrating. What you've just done is set a baseline of -20 on your meters is equivalent to 83 dB SPL in your environment based on those levels. Now that you've got your levels set, it is really important if you have any kind of master volume control, whether it's just a digital volume controller built into your computer or it's an actual hardware box that controls all your monitors at once, you mark down exactly where that 83 dB SPL calibration was, and that way you can return to it should it ever be necessary to turn things up or down. In my setup here, I'm just using an Mbox 3 Pro, which is nothing particularly fancy, but one of the things I like about it is it has a dedicated level control for all of its outputs, and I calibrated my system so that 12 o'clock up, straight up, is exactly 83 dB SPL on my speakers. Now, the last component of this process is a loudness meter, and there are plenty of free ones that you can download. There are some really, really great ones that are paid. I personally use Izotope Insight because it gives me the most complete representation of what my levels and what my sound is doing. But a great free one that you might want to check out is called the Youlean meter. There's a link in the description below. You can put this loudness meter on the very, very last master output of whatever DAW you're working in. And when you go to deliver your audio content, whether it's to YouTube or anywhere else, play it down once and it'll give you a measurement of how loud the average levels of your audio are. And that way, when you see specifications like, hey, YouTube limits things to -14 LUFS, you can actually see in your audio, there's a meter here saying your program level is -10, or it's -40, or it's -12, or whatever. And on top of that, your listening environment is going to be calibrated so that you can get an exact representation of how loud something's supposed to be now that you've established the baseline. Also, this whole process isn't just specifically useful in sound, it's also really helpful when you've got picture departments working with sound teams on more complicated projects, because you can get translation of ideas from the picture department into sound much more easily. I helped out a little while back on a show called Mr. Robot, and the sound supervisor that was really, really careful about maintaining a lot of the creative decisions that got made in the picture editorial process, because that show is really, really calling for a lot of complexity and a lot of very specific details. He actually went to a lot of the picture edit bays and picture editorial spaces and helped them calibrate their levels so that when they delivered audio from picture into the sound team, all of those decisions that they had made already were maintained through the rest of the sound process. And especially in complex workflows where you've got a lot of different moving parts happening and you want to make sure that every single thing is exactly right the whole way through, that's unbelievably helpful. So hopefully that all made sense. At the end of the day, having a calibrated listening environment is going to really, really help getting mixes to translate and free up a lot of time to make creative choices rather than troubleshoot technical issues. Feel free to comment below with any questions. Don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, and come follow me over on Instagram at AXK, and thanks for watching.